Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Hey guys, before we jump back into the podcast, I want to say thank you for listening. But I noticed that you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet. Go to Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube or just scan the QR code in the corner where you'll be able to find multiple podcasts that we have with over 300 episodes that's uploaded right now for your enjoyment. So do that really quickly. Now, get back to the podcast. All right, welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. Therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. To deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, please make sure you check out our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube, and subscribe to all of our podcasts, to this podcast and all of our other podcasts on your podcast listening platforms. I want to say thank you guys so very much for tuning in to the podcast. Man, it's been a long ride, and we are here today, just like any other day. We are blessed with a guest, but this is a returning guest, my friend, Miss Angie D. Lee. How are you doing, Angie?
I am well. Thank you so much, Ernest, for having me back. I'm so excited to be here.
Listen. I went back and looked at, when you reached out to me with your new project, and we're definitely going to get into that. As I was always glad when I have past guests come back, right? And so when you reached out to me, I'm like, let me go back and see, when that was, when you last was here. And that was episode 34. And this is episode 249. So it's been a while. It's really been a while. And it was just like, wow, really? That it's been that long, but definitely glad. And like we were talking a little bit off air, just over these last couple of years, there are so many people that are not doing now what they were doing then. And for us to still be around and still alive and kicking, that's definitely a blessing. So Angie, for all of my guests who don't know who you are, do me a favor. I want you to introduce yourself to my audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure. So again, I'm Angie D. Lee. I am a licensed clinical social worker, relationship therapist, intimacy coach, author, and speaker, and I'm based in the Chicagoland area. So I help couples hear each other again by teaching them how emotional wounds shape the way they listen, communicate, and connect. So I just thought that it would be a great time to come on a platform like Deal to Heal, because we're going to talk about all that healing that needs to take place in order for you to reconnect and be able to effectively communicate and listen in relationships.
Yeah, I love it. And it takes me back to that episode, because I went back and watched our previous episode. I think I watched like 4 times today. And it was really good. So definitely to my audience, make sure you guys go back. That's episode 34. So you're gonna have to do some scrolling to get back to it. But we're there. We're there. Episode 34 definitely has some great conversation. And one of the things that came up even then, which you just mentioned, when we talked about, one of the questions then was what were one of the things that we could work on in order to, keep the intimacy in our relationships. And the answer to that question you gave was communication. And so we're right back here. Still, hey, I always say the truth don't change.
But does it?
The truth don't change. It always stays the same. And so we're still talking about communication. And that is so important for the work that that you do, the work that I do, even, you
Yeah.
know, as being a podcaster, speaker, all of those things, it is just a different level of communication or a different form of communication. But when
Yeah.
we're talking about relationships, we definitely want to keep that communication going because there's so many things that can change, you know, with the way that we receive information,
Yeah.
right? So one of the things that, you know, I want to ask you about that we can talk about is the way that men and women may hear the same thing and then get a whole different meaning out of it, right? Definitely has been and has definitely played out its weight in gold in my in my
Yeah.
life, right? Some
Mhm.
of the relationships that I've been in where it's like, oh, you said this, this, and this, and I'm like, that is not what I said. You know what I mean? Like that's what you heard, but those words never came out of my mouth. You know what I'm saying? And so just in that, you know,
Mhm.
how is it that we can be, you know, two grown adults having the
Yeah.
same conversation, you know
Yep.
what I'm saying, but still get two totally different messages from the same sentence, even.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. You know what's so interesting about communication? Because again, I deal with this a lot in my practice and just couples that I meet with on a regular basis. A lot of times they come to me about communication, like, oh, we need to work on our communication. But a lot of people really don't understand what that means, you know, because it
Mhm.
has layers to it, right? Because
Right.
communication can be like language, like, are we speaking the same language? Communication could just be like tone, you know, tactfulness. Like it's so many layers, you know, to communication. And it isn't like divided by male or female. A lot of it has to do with it's not just about what's being said, it's about what's being emotionally heard. And so we usually
Mhm.
start there because there's a difference. Like, you know, I
Yeah.
can I can say these words, you can also say these words, but how we emotionally hear them could be totally different. And a lot of times that has a lot to do with our past wounds, you know, or old wounds, you know, our past experiences, trauma, you know, just some of anything can trigger, you know, this response I'm getting from something you said, you know. So one person can say something to someone and it lands just fine. Like, oh, I totally got what you meant, you know. The other person could have just had an experience yesterday or 10 years
Mhm.
ago. And then they hear this sentence and immediately it triggers something, you know, from their past. And so instead of responding to what was specifically said, or even just ask, you know, like, what did you mean by that? Because I think I was interpreting it a different way. Most people don't meet each other with curiosity, they meet each other with defensiveness. And this
Yeah.
is where we have that challenge that comes in with communication. Yep.
Yeah, I like what you just said. We don't meet each other with curiosity, you
Mhm.
know, and I think that is so important to be able to listen enough to say, okay, I'm not getting what you're putting down, should I say? You
Right.
know, like I'm not
Right.
getting, or I don't think I'm interpreting what you
Yeah.
said
Mhm.
the way that you said it,
Right.
and to be able to ask that question, okay, explain that a little bit more before I get in my feelings. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
Before I
Before.
go off, let me make sure that I'm hearing what you're trying to say and, and hearing
Mhm.
it correctly, because I think that definitely a thing within itself, because like I said, depending on your past,
Yeah.
depending on old wounds that you may
Hmm.
have, whether it's father wounds, whether
Yep.
it's, you know, mother wounds,
Yep.
or, you know, old spouses, whatever, you can say the same, or someone can say the same exact statement or sentence to
Hmm.
you, and you get a completely different response
Oh, for sure.
because of the position in which you hold. So
Yep.
my friend or your friend may say something to you, and I say the exact same thing, and then now it's like knives coming my way, you
Right.
know. But it's like, you know, like I've that old question, like, do I look fat in this dress? Her
Right.
homegirl might be like, girl, you know, you didn't even know. And then
Right.
the minute you say yes, then it's like, what? You know,
Yep.
Chucky and Jason is coming out. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Exactly.
But I also want to go to one of the things that you said, and we even addressed it in our past
Yeah.
episode when you mentioned, like, you know, even relationships and love has its own language, and we talked
Hmm.
about the love languages before in our past episode. You guys go back and watch that. Um, but even in the love languages, you know, you mentioned in our old episode that, you know, there's a that old saying of treat others how you want to be treated.
Mhm.
Or when it comes to your love languages, is not necessarily that way, because you may want to be treated a certain way because that's the love language that resonates with you, but that other person, that doesn't resonate with them. And
Right.
so it's like, I can't treat you how I want to be treated because that doesn't make you feel good.
Exactly.
So definitely we have to lean into those languages.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanna talk about, because you mentioned about, how you emotionally hear,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and I think that's important as well. And one of the things that I like to say, we want to be, even with our words, even
Yeah.
the way that we say something, we want to
Mhm.
make sure we're saying it correctly. And one of the things, there's a resource, and I'll definitely put it in here, that when I talk to other speakers, anybody that's in the public space where you're
Mhm.
talking, I always say there's a resource called the emotional thesaurus. And I
Mhm.
was like, you definitely want to lock into that, because it gives you different words to
Yeah.
use to convey the emotion that you're trying to convey,
For sure.
without, and I always say, I used to tell my kids this when they were little, right? When my sons got old enough where they wanted to start cursing, I always say, if you got to curse to get your point across, then you don't know enough words. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
even as adults, and outside of cursing, but if you can express yourself outside of anger, if you can't express yourself emotionally outside of anger
Yeah.
or without crying, then maybe you just need different words. And so I definitely um, would what's the word I'm trying to say? I would say check out that resource.
Yeah.
But back to what we're saying, the reason
Mhm.
I bring that up, because we're talking about emotional hearing,
Yeah.
and sometimes it does depend on the words that you say.
Mhm.
But then on the other side, as the person receiving,
Yeah.
maybe it may even be how we receive it, like making sure we're in the emotional space to receive it the way that it was
Yeah.
given.
Yeah.
So we're not jumping to conclusions, or we're
Yeah.
not adding to it
Mhm.
a level of
Yeah.
emotion or a level of intent
Yeah.
that had nothing to do with when the person said it. So
Yeah.
when we're talking about creating emotional safety, should I say,
Mhm.
that help us to continue to build in our relationships, build that
Yeah.
communication. What are
Mhm.
some of the things that we can put in place,
Yeah.
and some of the things that of, um, even as examples, that,
Yeah.
like, if this is going on,
Yeah.
what I mean, you might be in that space where you need to freshen up on your communication skills.
Yes, yeah, and this is such a good question because and this is again what I notice in sessions is that someone could be saying something and then their partner responds to it. Now it's a little bit of bickering back and forth or some discrepancies there, but then I might say something and then it lands with one of the partners and they're like, Angie, I be saying this stuff all the time. Like I don't understand why they listen to you and it landed okay. And I'm like, well, partly it's because you all are in a safe space. You know what I mean? So we'll start there. But then at the same time, too, a lot of times I'm really listening like for cues with people.
Right.
And this is why, and it's nothing against, AI or anything like that, because I think it has its place and it's helpful if you want to, say something to Chat GPT or, Claude or, what's the other one, Genesis and all of that,
Yeah.
it has its place. And I think it's a support to therapy and coaching as well. But what I get to see is the body language. I get to see the facial expressions. I get to see when it looks like someone is nervous, or they're starting to become defensive or even irate. And so a lot of times I'm looking at that. And a lot of times when we're so focused on trying to say the perfect thing or I'm trying to get this point across, we miss all of that other stuff that's going on right in front of us. So I would definitely say the first thing is pay attention, like really just be present with the person because a lot of times if we're just trying to get a point out there, we're trying to hurry up and solve a problem, we've missed what's like right in front of us is that there's a real body, in front of you and they're responding. So that's a big thing that you want to pay attention to first. It's like, am I even present to have this conversation? First of all. But like I tell people a lot of times, emotional safety isn't created by saying the perfect thing. It's created by helping your partner feel safe enough to hear you. And people are like, "Well, what does that look like?" You ask. Just like I said that statement, then you actually ask that question. Like, I want to be able to meet you where you are, but I also don't know what I need to do or say to make you feel safe. What does
Mhm.
that look like for you? And what that does immediately, it shines a light on that person like, oh, you actually care enough about my feelings to where you're not bringing anything else in. You're not trying to make your point. You're not trying to, like, say that I am the winner in this, and I'm going to win this argument. You're focused in just on me, like, and what it is that I need in this moment. Because we're going to get to me too, but the focus
Right.
is you right now because you have the concern. So because you have the concern, what is it that you need from me in order for you to feel safe? I tell people this all the time. If your partner stops a conversation, or let's just say asks you something, and you're ready to give a rebuttal, but you say, you know what? I really just want to acknowledge the fact that I recognize, because I'm present, I recognize your body language, your facial expression. It looks like you're upset, or overwhelmed. I just want to acknowledge that first. But the next thing I just want to say or ask, what do you need from me in order to feel safe in this conversation or in this relationship? It's not too many people that's gonna turn that away.
Mhm.
And if
Yeah,
anything,
yeah,
it might actually be a turn on. So that's a twofer. So if you try to you try to
yeah.
get some other things popping off, you know what I'm saying? Like, use that line, people. I be trying to tell them,
Right.
so but those are like the two biggest things. Presence, checking in with yourself, because this helps with emotional regulation too. A lot of times when we can slow down and just see what's going on around us, that also helps our nervous system. So that's another reason why conflicts are happening this way when it comes to communication and connection and feeling safe, is because our own nervous system sometimes is on fire or is getting
Mhm.
to that point. And so you need to be able to stop and say, wait a minute, let me calm down first. And a lot of times doing that is an example for your partner as well, because they're going to meet you where you are. A lot of times when we talk about matching energy, they're going to
Yeah.
match your energy. So why don't you give them something that's constructive to match, first of all,
Right.
and
Yeah,
that's what
because
helps people feel safe. Yeah.
that was one of the things that I was gonna bring up, because when you mentioned about being having two people that say the same thing, and
Hmm.
even when they say, well, I've been saying that all the time, why he didn't hear when I said, having that safe space where you can be able to look at the body language and all of that, but not only to look at it, but you can feel that
Yeah.
energy when they come
Mhm.
in. You
Oh,
can feel
yeah.
it when they walk in the door, and he's
Yep.
already like, I don't want to be here in the first place. You know what I mean? So you
Right.
already like, all right, I already know what I got to deal with,
Yep.
And then
Yep.
sometimes I think there's a part of it of the redundancy maybe
Yep.
of sometimes the conversation,
Hmm.
right? Because that same thing for those of us who have kids, a lot of us went through the same thing with our kids. It's like
Yeah.
you tell them the same thing over and over, and they just don't listen to you. And
Hmm.
then the coach or the auntie or somebody
Yeah.
else says it, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden it's like a new revelation. And you're like,
Right.
I've been telling you that all the time, And even the secret with that is
Yeah.
I learned, my kids are big now,
Yeah.
but when my kids were younger, to use that to my advantage,
Mhm.
because knowing that that's that, so I would go reach out to my brother or
Yeah.
someone that's closer to them that I know that they will listen to, and say,
Yeah.
hey, I'm trying to teach them this lesson, could
Mhm.
you just convey it to them in your
Yeah.
own way?
Yeah.
And your kids a lot of times will receive it, just
Yeah.
because as a father, and I know I went through this with my daughter,
Mhm.
even when she became older, and having conversations with her, and so like, Dad, you always give me a lecture, and I'm like, but I'm trying to tell you these things that you need to know. You're a young adult now. So it's like, all right, let me
Yeah.
not say it,
Yeah.
just because sometimes it's just like the consistency of your
Yeah.
voice,
Yeah.
saying whatever,
Yeah.
then it's like they automatically tune you out,
Well,
and that can
yeah.
go with our spouses too, our spouses as well, is
Yeah.
that they just get used to hearing our voice,
Yeah.
especially if we are, constantly saying something, and it's
Mhm.
like, all right, I ain't even trying to hear it. So sometimes whether it's the safe space or the
Yeah.
new voice that the message is coming through,
Yeah.
it makes it work a lot better. And also, I think that going also back to something that you said, when we're listening, one of the things that I learned, especially just since I've been in this space,
Yeah.
and especially just with the climate of our world today, of our nation,
Yeah.
different things that is going on, different topics in politics, and all of that stuff that is
Mhm.
happening. Everybody has an opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has an opinion. Everybody want to
Yeah.
voice it,
Mm.
and I'm down for the conversation. But one of
Right.
the things
Right.
I learned to start saying was, before we get started,
Mm-hmm.
are we having this conversation to understand,
Yeah.
or are we having this conversation just so you can vent? I'm
Mm-hmm.
cool with either way.
Yeah.
But let's just let me know what we're supposed to be doing here,
Right.
because there are times you try to have a civil conversation. This
Mm-hmm.
person ain't really ain't trying to hear nothing you got to say. They just want to
No.
say all what they trying to say, and
Yeah.
I'm cool with it.
Yep.
Just let me know so I know how to receive this
Yeah.
conversation going in.
For sure.
But I think that's the same thing in our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Are we, when we are sitting down to have these conversations, are we coming to be vulnerable? Are we
Yep.
coming looking for a resolution that works for us and
Yep.
not just me? You know what I
Right.
mean? Or a resolution that works for, us and not just you. Like,
Yeah.
the relationship is why we're here.
Yeah.
So we want to do something, come to the table to get
Mm-hmm.
something done that works for the relationship. And I think when we are able to come into the relationship or into the conversation
Mm-hmm.
with that ear to really want to understand
Yeah.
what our mate is saying, what our spouse is saying, to really get the true meaning and
Mm-hmm.
understanding out of it, I think then that works and adds to our communication as well.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I definitely say to piggyback off of that too is if you're not in a place where you're ready to understand, that's also okay to
Mhm.
acknowledge within yourself first. And it's also okay to express that to your partner where it's like, right now, just because of where I am, the level that I am, whatever language you want to use, like, look,
Yeah.
I'm at a level 10, or I'm feeling 0 to 100 in my spirit, so I just want to,
Yeah.
whatever, what I mean, whatever the
Right.
language, but can we circle back? And that's a big
Mhm.
thing too that I talk about a lot with my couples is that just don't leave each other hanging. Like if this is a moment where you are struggling and you're trying to kind of, regulate your emotions or you're trying to calm your nervous system, whatever coping strategies you have, you're trying to utilize them and you need a little bit more time, communicate that so both people know what to expect and that you're on the same page. But then also give a follow-up, plan. What is the follow-up? Are we going to, reconvene this conversation later this evening? Are we going to talk about it tomorrow? Or do we need to talk about it next week? But whatever you decide, follow through,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
something too that I would say, some of the four major things, in order to really ensure, that emotional safety with your partner. Number one is consistency. And you talked about that. Whatever you say you're going to do that thing, right? And if something
Mhm.
changes, give me a heads up. Just, what? I thought this is what was going to happen. This is not the case, but also provide an alternative. Again, don't leave people hanging. Don't
Right.
just say, well, I don't feel like it today. So you out here by yourself, figure it out, but meet
Right.
me somewhere, but also just be consistent with that and be predictable. That's the next thing. It's like, again, I want to know, and this is what's going to help my nervous system is I want to know that when I bring things to you, things that you don't always agree with, things that you don't like, as long as I'm being respectful in my approach, I can rely on you to also meet me there in a way where we can have a conversation without ripping each other's heads off. Until you start to have that predictability in a relationship, people typically don't feel emotionally safe. They're just like, you know what? I don't know what to expect from you, or I do know what to expect, and you a hot mess. That's what I know what to expect.
Right.
You always do, So I don't want to
Right.
talk to you about this because you shut me down, or you combat me every time that I bring up a topic, or you question my motives, whatever it is.
Right.
That predictability could go either way. Predictability and like how to have conversations and work through this and resolve it and we problem solve together, or you're the opposite, but either way you're showing me something through your predictability, and
Yeah.
then curiosity, we talked about that. That's another thing. If I'm being met with curiosity such as like, what made you feel that way, how is it that this angered you but maybe this doesn't anger you? Like, I want to know more about that, as opposed to why you always getting angry, right? Like,
Mhm.
every time I turn around, you got your face turned up and you got your attitude and everything like that. It's like no one wants to talk after that. It's like you just talked about me. You know what I'm saying? Like, so and then the last thing is repair. After all is said and done, we want to have a plan to repair our relationship so that we can get back on track and so that we can be in a healthy relationship, because disagreements are going to happen. We're not going to always like everything that each other does or says, but do we have a plan to repair what feels like it's been broken, or shattered or whatever that is,
Yeah.
disconnected? Are we coming back and saying, yes, I recognize this. What are we going to do about it? We're going to follow through. And then we're going to repair this thing by reconnecting, whether that's a date night, whether that's a night where we just explore, things that are on our minds, things that we want to explore sexually, whatever that might be. But we need to come back and seal this thing right back up. Because when there's disconnect, we're on two different pages, and we want to get back on the same track. So those are like the four major things when it comes to emotional safety in a
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And as you were talking, one of the things that came to my mind too that I think we need to recognize, especially when we're talking about communication and love languages, is also noticing and understanding our partner's processing.
Yeah.
How they process information, right?
Yeah.
Because I would say, even for myself, most recently, I had a situation with someone where they kept asking me like, "What's on your mind?"
Hmm.
And I'm like, "I can't tell you because I haven't done processing it yet."
Yep.
You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's like,
Right.
I want to know, how you feel about this, but I'm like, I can't tell you how I feel about it because
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it yet.
Mm.
It takes some
Right.
time for me to, process the
Yep.
information, and which,
Yep.
the way that I do. I'm not an
Yeah.
instant person. I like to take my
Mhm.
time with it, think
Yeah.
about it, kind of think things through. And I think that's important for us to know too, because a lot of times, we are different than the people that we attract, or the people
Yeah.
that's attracted to us, right? Because
Yeah.
opposites attract. And that definitely has showed up in my past, right?
Mm.
So I'm usually, even though I talk a lot on the podcast, in person I don't talk that much. You know what I'm saying?
I have clients
It's
like
that whole introvert thing. Like,
Yep.
when I get in front of the mic, I'm different. But
Right.
you move the mic out the way, I'm quiet, I'm laid back, I'm more of
Yep.
an introvert.
Hmm.
And being that way, when there's things that, conversations that's being had, or things that I have to think about or
Yeah.
process, that's my way of processing it. I like
Yeah.
to take my time with it. I think about it,
Yeah.
how I feel about it. I'm not going to just spit out,
Hmm.
an answer, or spit out a what I believe to be, what we should do next or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, no, I gotta think about it. I gotta process it.
Yeah.
But I think that's important for us to understand that
Mhm.
if your partner is that person that takes time, then it's like, okay, I need some time. Let me
Yeah.
sit with it, and like you said, but still come back later.
Hmm.
Even in the midst of the conversation, if you want to say, okay, I know you need some time,
Yeah.
but you got like 2 days. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So you're not leaving me hanging
Right.
for a week or something,
For
waiting
sure.
for an answer for
Right.
something. Um, but I think that's important for us to
Yeah.
recognize as well, just those differences in the
Hmm.
way that we even process the
Yeah.
information after it's been conveyed, because that's a big part of communication. It's not
Hmm.
just saying it, but
Yeah.
it's for it to be received, and
Hmm.
not only received, but it received in a way that's positive, and that we can move forward with it. And
Yeah.
sometimes that takes some people a little bit longer
Yeah.
to process that information.
Hmm.
Um, I want to talk about two more things before we get
Yeah.
out of here, but definitely one thing I want to talk about is, we have talked a lot about communication,
Hmm.
right? And using our communication to either repair or to set us up, successfully for our relationships and the
Hmm.
intimacy in our
Yeah.
relationships. But some people may be hearing this conversation a little late, right? Some
Yeah.
people may be like, "Hey, we passed that part." You know what I mean? We already got the hole in the boat. How are we
Yep.
fixing this thing? You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Yep.
And so when we talk about, still that communication, I think the communication is the floating device, it's the
Yeah.
life jacket, and
Yeah.
it's the repairman at the same time.
Hmm.
Like, if we
Yep.
can come back to where we can actually have a civil conversation and
Right.
talk through even the things that has broken us in this
Yeah.
relationship, a lot of times we can find the healing in that as well, and begin to put this thing back together. And
Hmm.
so when we're talking, or when you're talking about, the miscommunication and the damage that it has done in some of the relationships, how do we get past that? How do we deal with it, first of all? But
Yeah.
then how do we even get past it to even get back to the space where now we can start rebuilding?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And a lot of times what I see is that again, people don't really have a communication problem. The
Mhm.
problem is the interpretation, because these people know how to talk. Okay, folks can talk and they can talk forever, and you be like, you know what? Why we ain't getting nowhere? Like we communicating, what's the problem? And that's what a lot of couples feel like when they come to me sometimes. I don't get it. We do talk. We talk, we yell, we stomp, we do all the things that show that we're communicating, but we're not getting anywhere. And a lot of times it's because of the interpretation. So what I explain to them is like it's a cycle. And so the cycle starts off with like, you have partner A says something, whatever that is. Okay. Partner B just immediately starts to assign a meaning to what was said. Okay, so that's typically what's going on right there. Now they're reacting to the meaning. Okay, so that's what's going on, and they're not reacting to the actual words. So that's like the first part of that cycle, and then partner A starts to become defensive, right? And then now both people are feeling misunderstood because now they're going back and forth. That's not what I meant. That's not what I said. The whole shebang. And then the cycle just repeats and repeats. And the way that I like for couples to break that cycle is first, I just say, instead of asking who's right, or trying to get your point across, the first thing is, whoever stated something, ask the other person, first, what did you hear? Because if I can just, because I know I said this, but you'll be surprised. Like some people can say something and then you'll say, what did you hear? You were like, now listen, okay. I said, can you pick up the socks by the door, right? And then the other person said, well, I heard you say, you always throwing your stuff by the door every time. He was like, whoa, like pump the brakes. That is not, I just said, can you pick up the socks by the door? That's a yes or no question. It's either yes or no. You know what I mean? Right? But we doing all of this other stuff. And then the next question is, well, what did you make that mean? And that's what that statement was like, oh, you never pick up this, and you always doing that. So now you're starting to assign meaning. Like you're starting to like see this as an identity issue. Like, okay, this is how you see me because I leave these socks, by the door. Then that third question is, now what emotion comes up for you when you start to assign meaning to it? Does it make you angry? Does it make you frustrated? Does it make you feel worthless? Do you feel sad about it? Do you feel like our relationship is over because we're always fighting around, socks and whatnot? So tell me a little bit more about these emotions that are coming up for you. And then what is it that you're actually trying to communicate? And this is for both people. What were you trying to say? The one person, partner A, could just be like, I just wanted you to pick them up because I tend to slip and fall if I don't see it. That was it. It was just a safety concern. Where the other person was like, oh, well, I mean, I just thought you was trying to say that I wasn't a good partner. Like, oh, okay, you got all of that from some socks.
Right.
Okay, cool. You know what I'm saying? But and so all of this, requires people to slow down. And no one does that. They just go right into that made me feel a certain way because I interpreted a certain way. So now it's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, how about we slow down and let me just stop and regulate myself because I know what's coming up for me. Immediately when I heard you say those socks, I started feeling frustrated because I was interpreting it a certain way. So let me slow down and just tell me what it is that you want. Yes, can you pick up the socks? No problem. Now we could talk about the meaning of the socks if you want, or I can just pick up the socks and move on. So again, we're making a mountain out of a molehill sometimes when we don't slow down. And that's what I've really noticed in terms of like, when it comes to communication, it's not so much the communicating part, it's the interpretation part. And those are four main questions that you can slow down and ask each other in situations like that. And some people will tell me, Angie, we don't talk like that. That's not, and I'm like, okay, well, you got a couple of options. You can learn how to say what I just said in your language that you all understand, or you all can continue the cycle. This is all your choice. I'm just
Right.
giving you some tools. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it's always funny when it's like combative, or like they're trying to, have that rebuttal with me. But even those are times where I get to model what it is that I'm teaching. I'm slowing down and I'm saying, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. And so what I'm saying is these are the options that are very helpful. And I've seen this be helpful for a lot of couples, especially if they speak it in their language to each other, because they understand that. But then if they don't have a system or something that they can follow step by step, they find that the cycle continues.
Yeah,
What do
yeah.
you think about that, or how do you feel about that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you said that because I can attest to that even in my own
Hmm.
past relationships, that stopping and say, what did you hear?
Yeah.
What did you hear me say?
That's
That
a
has definitely changed some of the conversations that I've had in the past, because you never know what that person, how that person interpreted it.
hmm
And when you talk about the when you say, okay, that's what you heard, well, why did you hear that? Like, what did it bring up for you?
Yep.
You
hmm
never know the experiences that people have had in their
Yep.
past, where
Exactly.
something as simple as pick up the socks can trigger something
Hmm.
that really ain't have nothing to do with you,
Right.
right? So I remember even in a past relationship that I was in, and I'll tell my side of it, right? So growing up, I have 8 siblings, so it was 9 of us, right?
That's a big
And
family.
so, yes, yes. So coming up, we had our chores that we had to do, and one of the chores, of course, was washing dishes.
Hmm.
And my dad was like, I don't care who night it is, as long as when I come in this house, the dishes is done. We
Yep.
good. Well, what would happen is, some of my siblings would not do the dishes on their day. So when my dad, got to the point where now he's upset, it don't matter. Everybody's in trouble. And so it got to the
Yep.
point where I was like, look, I ain't trying to get no extra punishments and stuff, and so I just automatically wash the dishes. So
Yeah.
what happened was, after so long of my dad coming in, he see me washing dishes every day, that he made me stop washing dishes. Like literally, like, you can't wash the dishes.
Hmm.
Um, but that also took me into adulthood, where, like, when it comes to two main chores, washing dishes and folding clothes, I can fold clothes all day. It's actually kind of peaceful for me. You know what I mean? Like, I'll sit there and turn something on and I fold clothes or whatever all day
Yeah.
long. But you say, okay, go wash some dishes. Them dishes might sit there for a little while. You know what I
Right.
mean? Just because of my past and my relationship
Yeah.
with washing dishes,
Yeah.
just like, man, I really don't like washing
Hmm.
dishes, but that is something that I carry with me.
Yeah.
And with us having that conversation, if you're in a relationship, and now you're having a conversation with your mate, because she's like, okay, I cooked, you supposed to clean. And I'm like, yeah, about that. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? It's not that I don't want to do it just
Yeah.
because whatever, but I have some trauma, should I say,
Mhm.
associated with that,
Yeah.
where it's just not my favorite thing. And if
Mhm.
we can come to the understanding and say, okay, well, how can we make this work? And
Yeah.
that was something that came up in actually one of my past marriage, was our agreement of, you wash the dishes and I'll
Hmm.
fold the clothes, because she had a thing with folding clothes,
Yeah.
and but we really had the conversation to understand, this is why I don't like
Yeah.
folding clothes.
Yeah.
This is why I don't like washing dishes. And for
Hmm.
us, it worked, because I'm like, hey, I'm cool with folding clothes.
Right.
And she was cool with washing dishes. So we just, all right, I take care of clothes, you take care of dishes,
Yeah.
and we done.
Yeah.
But I think it's that having that conversation, having, getting the real understanding of it. And if it's that deep, to be able to have the conversation of
Yeah.
what's behind it,
Yeah.
and I think having that all together, that communication can really open up a lot of doors for our
Mhm.
relationships, open up a lot of doors, especially for when it comes to repairing some of
Yeah.
the damage that has been done. I think those 4 things that you mentioned
Mhm.
definitely will open up the door for that, because it's not just saying something, but it's really
Yeah.
like, okay, let's get to the bottom of it,
Yeah.
so that if this comes up again, I know
Yeah.
why it came up. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And when it
Yeah.
wasn't just a space of defiance
Hmm.
or disrespect or anything
Yeah.
like that, like, no, I really have some trauma or whatever that's connected to this thing, and which why I react in a certain way. So if we
Yeah.
can address that, then we can, begin to mend
Hmm.
things. So I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. One more thing before we
Hmm.
get out of here that I definitely want us to talk about.
Yeah.
Make sure you guys, to my listeners, make sure you guys go back and check out that episode 34, I think it was. We had a great time. But in that, when we had that, one of the things that we talked about was the fact that you are an author
Hmm.
and you had several books available at that time. And now you're like the master author, because now you have another book that's coming out. So let's talk about this new project. What is that
Uh,
about?
yeah. So this one is actually a workbook. So obviously, my
Okay.
previous books, I've written fiction books, novels, and also a nonfiction book as well called The Intimacy Guru. But this one is a workbook. So this is a lot more interactive. This is where I really want to help people learn some stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Okay.
one thing to read a book, but how many people really digest that information and take it and put it to use like right away? A
Mhm.
lot of times you don't, when you're reading,
Right.
unless you're reading for school or something like that, or you have to do a project, you might be highlighting and all those things. And some people just do it for fun too, as well. But for the workbook, I really wanted to help people kind of like not only understand this concept, like we're talking about it, but then also put it to use. Like I said, right away. I'm really big on helping people get some quick wins. Cause see, that's motivating. When you start reading something and you start literally putting it into practice right there on the spot, and you start seeing like the wheels turning a little bit, you're like, oh, this is dope. Like, you know what I mean? So that's my goal is to help you feel like, okay, with everything that you've talked about, Angie, how do we do this? How do I put the pen to paper? How do I have the conversation? How do I follow through? And so I came up with a framework, which I'm so excited about because
Mhm.
I work within this within like my sessions with my couples. And so I do it very naturally when I'm working, but I've never created an actual framework about it. I've just been doing it. And so I was in a session one day with a couple, and they were kind of going back and forth and everything like that. And I said, it really sounds like you all are really hearing each other through a hurting ear. Like, it's a lot of
Mhm.
hurt there. It's a lot of deeply rooted. But what we want to do is start focusing on how do we heal your ear? Because when you can heal that ear of what you're interpreting, you all can communicate in a way that's not only effective, but then it also promotes healing within the relationship. And literally, they looked at me. They was like, "That make a lot of damn sense, if that's okay." And that's what I was like, "Oh, that's the book, right?"
Mhm.
So, so the framework is called the hurting ear, healed ear listening method. Okay, so I'll repeat that again. So the hurting ear, healed ear listening method, and that's on Amazon. So if you forget that, you just like, Angie, I can't remember all of that. Just type in like hurting ear, healed ear, or just type in Angie D. Lee, and it'll show like a list of my books come up. And I just want to kind of just touch on it just a little bit, and
Mhm.
what this workbook is about. So, when I say the hurting ear is the part of us that listens through past pain, instead
Mhm.
of the present moment. So when we've experienced like rejection, criticism, abandonment, betrayal, our brains naturally become protective of itself, right? Because it's like, I'm hearing all of these things coming at me, and this is hurtful, to me. So I go into protection mode. A lot of people think that, fight or flight is all about like the physical, like, oh, okay, somebody's coming for me or whatever. I got to bob and weave, but we do that emotionally as well. And so that's what the hurting ear is all about. And so when we start hearing that danger is kind of approaching us, we have a hard time communicating in love. And so that's what that hurting ear is about. But the goal is to get to a point where we can progress and work towards a healed ear, because what we hear and what we interpret is all going to determine or make or break how we resolve the issue that's in front of us. So that's what the workbook is all about. It's, again, very interactive, very much from the first page. You're writing things down, you're thinking, you're reflecting. You can do it by yourself, but it definitely
Mhm.
works with a partner. And I want to just kind of put this out here too. It doesn't have to be a romantic partner. What I love about this framework is that it goes across every relationship that you could think of. So if you are having some issues with, a romantic partner or a sibling, a parent, a colleague, anyone that you are in relation with, you can use this framework. So I'm really excited that this project is out here, right now. And like I said, again, it's on Amazon, very interactive workbook. Definitely check it out. I am just so
Mhm.
excited to start hearing the feedback. It just came out like 2 weeks ago, so it's still new. But yeah, definitely, check it out on Amazon, or just go to my website, angiedlee.com, and you'll see it on there as well. But yeah, I'm really excited about that project, and I'm just so glad to just be sharing it, to different platforms, and just sharing it with your audience too, Ernest. I appreciate it.
No problem. I love just listening to it as you were saying. Um, once you heal that ear,
Mhm.
one of the things I always say, I give the analogy of a person that wears glasses.
Yeah.
It's like you take your eyesight in everything that you do, and
Hmm.
so if you have bad eyesight and it's blurry, it affects every relationship. It affects what you
Yeah.
read. It affects what you eat because
Hmm.
everything is
Yeah.
blurry. But when you
Yeah.
put those glasses on and it begins to bring everything in focus,
Yeah.
it affects everything that you see. And that's the
Yeah.
same thing with that ear. If you got
Yeah.
a hurting ear and your ear is listening, always listening for offense,
Hmm.
then you're finding something to be offended about in
Yeah.
everything that you hear. But
Yeah.
when you start to heal that ear and now you're able to hear what's really being said, it makes a difference in your life across the board, not just
Yeah.
with your like you said, not just with your intimate partner,
Yeah.
but with every relationship, friendship, on the
Yeah.
job, communication,
Hmm.
period. It
Yeah.
definitely would make a difference. I
Yeah.
love it. I can't wait to check it out myself.
Yeah.
You guys don't have to even remember that whole long name because the link is going to be in the description, so you can just go down and click it to get straight to it. Angie, I want to say thank you so much
Ooh.
for being on again, right? Thank you for being on again. We're definitely going to have to connect, especially since we're both in the Chicagoland area.
Yeah.
I've been working on doing some in-person events myself,
Yeah.
and yeah, we're gonna have to get together and do something. I don't know. We'll
Sure.
figure it out.
I'm
Uh,
excited. I'm ready to get back out there. I've been kind of low key these days, just working with my head down. But yeah, I'm excited.
right,
Yeah.
right, yes, yeah, yeah. So we gonna get to it. I am going to I'm gonna do a real quick commercial break, right? And then I'll say a couple of things, but then I want you to have the last word,
Okay.
and I want you to leave us with a word of advice,
Yeah.
information, however you feel,
Okay.
and then also to leave us with your social media handles,
Yes.
so that we can connect with you. So
Yeah.
until then, real quick, I'm gonna jump into this real quick. Let's get a word from our sponsor, and then we will come right back. So give me a second. Hey guys, this podcast is sponsored by the Deal to Heal School for Living. That is our online community on the school platform. You guys can go there and check it out absolutely free for the first 7 days. And while you're there, take advantage of all the free resources that we have. And if you decide to stay, it's only $27 a month. And each month you have access to a new workshop. So go check that out at the Deal to Heal School for Living on the school platform. Just scan the QR code in the corner and you guys will be able to get there. All right. We'll see you soon. All right. All right. To my listeners, thank you guys once again. Please make sure you guys go check out our our school platform on the school, our school community on the school platform. In the meantime, make sure you guys go to dealhealfulfill.org. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org, which is our regular website. It will begin to overhaul soon. So if you go to it and it's not up, then just come back later and check it out. And if you go to it and it looks like, well, this thing looks kind of dated, give us give us a little time because we're working on it. We're working on it, right? So make sure again you guys stay in contact with us at dealhealfulfill.org, which is our major our work website. Dang, I can't even get it. Ebooks by ejames.com. As you guys know, I have written several ebooks, and at ebooks by ejames.com is where you used to be able to find them. But guess what? They're not there anymore. So if you look up ebooks by ejames.com, you will not find those ebooks. However, what I did do is I made it possible for you guys to get all of my ebooks absolutely free when you check out the Deal to Heal School for Living. So when you check out the Deal to Heal School for Living, you have a 7-day free period for you to check out all the resources and all of the workshops that we have there. So once you go there, scan the QR code in the corner, check out the Deal to Heal School for Living, go to the resources tab, or should I say go to the classroom tab, and you will see a classroom that says free resources. And when you go to those free resources, you'll be able to download all of the ebooks absolutely free. Again, but you have to go to the Deal to Heal School for Living on the School platform in order to get all of our ebooks absolutely free. So make sure you guys go and check that out. Deal to Heal Tees, that is still up, right? So that website is still active. Deal to Heal Tees, which is our inspirational t-shirt line. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Not only can you find inspirational tees, but you can also find our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. There's one for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and there's also one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Both of those t-shirts are there under Deal to Heal podcast and tees. And Angie, guess what? I went back and looked at our episode. I didn't even have a logo. My logo was so bogus that I had back then. It was just crazy. But that just shows how far we have come over these couple years. And so not only do I have multiple podcasts, but then we actually have official logos. So make sure you guys go to the Deal to Heal, dealtohealtees.com to get your inspirational t-shirt or to get some of our podcast merch. Last but not least, one of the things that I've been blessed to be a part of is an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops bi-monthly on the second Saturday of every other month. Talking about forgiveness. We talk about forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world. And we even talk about forgiveness and wellness by talking about how unforgiveness affects your body physically. So those workshops are absolutely free and they are virtual. So make sure you guys go to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for our next free virtual workshop, or you can go to Eventbrite and look up forgiveness workshops and sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission, and it will come up. So whenever you listen to this podcast, either one just ended or there's one coming up. So make sure you go to forgivenessmission.com in order to check out our free virtual workshops that we have on forgiveness bi-monthly. So make sure you guys go to check that out. Once again, Angie, I want to say thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for coming back. It's great connecting with you once again. I want you to have the last word. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, information, however you feel. Here's your social media handles and tell us where we can find you. I'll let you have the word. The last word on the floor is yours.
Thank you. You know, I definitely want to leave you guys with three major things, to just remember. The first one is healing doesn't always change what was said, but it changes what you're able to hear. The next thing is the conversation you're having usually isn't the conversation your partner is experiencing. And the last thing, the goal isn't better arguments. The goal is better understanding. Again, I'm Angie D. Lee. I am a licensed clinical social worker, relationship therapist, intimacy coach, author, and speaker. You can find me on my website at angiedlee.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and YouTube under angiedlee.com. Well, Angie D. Lee. And also my new workbook is called The Hurting Ear, Healed Ear Listening Framework, and that can be found on Amazon and all your online book retailers, as well as my website, angiedlee.com. And thanks again so much, Earnest, for having me. It has been a pleasure reconnecting with you again.
No problem. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is still the same since episode 34, and we're on episode 249. It's to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Then check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something to inspire you. That's dealtohealtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealtees.com. Again, That's dealtohealtees.com. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Tees. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.